Let's be honest. We've seen Phil Mickelson survive a lot. The gambling debts, the LIV defection, even the whispers about him leaving a private club in San Diego. We just shrugged and said, that's Phil being Phil. But this week, something landed that doesn't feel like the rest. Not because another accusation exists. That alone isn't new. What is new is who's speaking this time. This isn't a stranger or an employee behind a counter. This is a woman who was once seated at the same tables as the PGA Tour's biggest names. Dinners, parties, the inner circle. And when someone from inside that world finally breaks the silence, the entire locker room starts to feel different. Here's the part that should worry every golf fan. The first accusation came and went. People forgot. But this second story, it connects dots that stretch back nearly a decade. And the more you look, the more you realize this isn't just about one bad night or one misunderstanding. It looks like a pattern. And the tour, they've gone completely quiet. That silence might be the loudest thing of all. So over the next few minutes, we're going to walk through exactly who this second woman is, what she claims happened, and, most importantly, why her story rewrites everything we thought we knew about Phil Mickelson's legacy. We're not talking about business moves anymore. We're talking about something deeper. Here's my honest take. I think we've given too many passes to too many players for too long. But maybe I'm wrong. That's why I want to hear from you. Does this actually change how you view Phil, or do you think it's just noise that'll blow over? Drop your opinion in the comments below. And if you care about the raw, unfiltered golf stories that the networks won't touch, hit that subscribe button. We don't do fluff here. Now, you might be thinking, didn't we already hear about this a few weeks ago? And you'd be right. The first story broke in early June. A female employee at the Farms Golf Club in San Diego accused Phil of inappropriate physical contact. The club investigated. Phil's lawyers denied everything, claimed he resigned his membership, and promised video evidence that would clear his name. And what happened? Nothing. The story faded. Fans moved on. The video never materialized. But here's what we didn't realize at the time. That first accusation wasn't the headline, it was the warning shot. Because the person who broke that story, Alan Shipnuck, wasn't finished. He'd been digging deeper, talking to more people, connecting pieces that didn't seem to fit together at first glance. What he found changed everything. Because when the second woman stepped forward, she wasn't some anonymous figure hiding behind a lawyer's statement. She had a name, a face, and a history with the PGA Tour that most fans would recognize instantly. And the moment Shipnuck published her story, the entire conversation about Phil Mickelson shifted from business scandal to something far more uncomfortable. Here's the thing about the tour that the casual viewer never sees. Behind the million-dollar swings and the Sunday afternoon drama, there's a closed world, a private world. Players, wives, caddies, executives, they all move in the same circles, attend the same dinners, stay in the same hotels. And when something happens inside that bubble, the people who know the truth are the same people who have the most to lose by speaking up. That's why the second woman's identity matters so much, because she was part of that world, not an outsider, not an employee who could be easily dismissed. Somebody who belonged. And when somebody from inside the bubble finally breaks the silence, you have to ask yourself, what changed? Why now? And more importantly, what does it say about the culture that kept her quiet for nearly a decade? Those questions are uncomfortable, but they're exactly what we're going to answer, and I promise you, what you're about to hear will make you look at Phil Mickelson and maybe the entire PGA Tour in a completely different light. But before we get to that, we need to understand one thing. You remember the first story, right? The one at the Farms? That was just the beginning. And once you understand how that first domino fell, you'll realize why the second one changed everything. So let's go back to early June. The Farms Golf Club in San Diego, one of those exclusive places where money talks and membership means everything. A female employee there came forward with a claim that made people pause. She said Phil Mickelson had made unwanted physical contact with her, non-consensual, inappropriate. Those were the words she used. The club didn't mess around. They launched an investigation. And pretty soon, Phil was told to leave the property. His lawyers quickly jumped in, insisting he wasn't kicked out, that he actually resigned. They even said there was video that would prove his side of the story. But here's where it gets interesting. That video never showed up. Not to the public, not to the media, nothing. And as the weeks passed, people started to forget. The story dropped out of the news cycle. Golf fans went back to talking about tournament results, LIV drama, and who was going to win the next major. But Alan Shipnuck didn't forget. And he's the reason you're hearing about this again. Shipnuck is the kind of journalist who doesn't let go. He's been covering golf for decades. He's written books about Tiger Woods, about the tour's inner workings, about the players who are worshipped like gods. He knows where the bodies are buried, metaphorically speaking. And when he heard about the farm story, he didn't just report it and move on. He started asking questions, quiet ones, the kind that make people nervous. What he discovered was that the farms wasn't an isolated incident. There were other clubs, other stories, other whispers that had been floating around for years but never made it past the locker room walls. And once he started pulling that thread, it led him straight to the second woman. Someone who wasn't just connected to the golf world, she was part of its fabric. And her story was far more detailed than the first one. She wasn't a club employee. She wasn't asking for money. She wasn't looking for attention. She was just done staying silent. Now, think about that for a second. Why would someone stay quiet for nearly a decade? What holds people back from speaking up about something that happened to them? In the golf world, the answer is pretty simple. Reputation, careers, friendships. The tour is a small community. If you speak out against a legend like Phil Mickelson, you're not just fighting one person. You're fighting a system that has protected him for 30 years. And that brings us to the second woman's story, the one that actually changes the narrative. Her name is Ashley Perez, and if that last name sounds familiar to you, it should. She was married to Pat Perez, a PGA Tour player who's been around for years. Pat and Phil were friends. They traveled together. They played practice rounds together. Their families spent time together. That's what makes this so hard to process. In 2015, Pat and Ashley were invited to stay at Phil's house during the Barclays tournament in New Jersey. Phil had a mansion near Liberty National Golf Club, the kind of place that makes you feel like you've made it in life. Big rooms, nice views, everything you'd expect from a guy who's won 6 majors and made hundreds of millions of dollars. Ashley was newly married at the time, excited to be part of that world. And at first she said Phil was warm and welcoming. He sent her good morning texts, made her feel special. Looking back now, she describes those texts as something different, something darker. She called it grooming, a gradual process of making someone feel comfortable before crossing a line. The night everything changed, they were having dinner at Phil's house. Pat got up to use the bathroom. Ashley was alone at the table with Phil for just a few minutes, and in that short window, she says Phil pulled out his phone and showed her an explicit photo of himself, completely naked, fully aroused, just a swipe away on his screen. And then he said something that made her skin crawl. He told her he'd leave his bedroom door open that night. If Pat fell asleep, she should come find him. Think about the audacity of that moment. He wasn't asking. He wasn't checking if she was interested. He was assuming that because he's Phil Mickelson, because he's rich and famous and powerful, that she would just go along with it. Ashley says she froze. She didn't know what to do. Pat came back to the table. The night continued, but something had shifted, and she never forgot that moment. Now, why is this story more dangerous than the first one? Simple. It shows a pattern. This wasn't a random incident at a club. This was something that happened years before, in a private setting, with someone who was part of his inner circle. And it wasn't a one-time thing. Shipnuck's investigation revealed that Phil had been asked to leave not just the farms, but 2 other exclusive clubs in Southern California, the Madison Club and the Bridges. That's 3 clubs, 3 separate situations where his behavior became a problem. So ask yourself, how many other Ashley Perez's are out there? How many other women who were made to feel uncomfortable, who were pressured, who were silenced by the culture of the tour? Because that's the part that hurts the most. The silence. The system that protects the stars and ignores everyone else. Ashley said it herself. There's a culture of silence in golf that keeps women from speaking up. When you give players that much money and that much adoration, they start believing they're untouchable. And when they believe that, they start acting like it. Phil's response to the second story was predictable. His lawyer called it a smear campaign, an anonymously sourced attack. They denied everything. But here's the thing. They didn't deny the specific details. They didn't say, that never happened. They just attacked the source. That's a strategy. And it's one we've seen before. But something else happened this time. Phil's wife, Amy, actually spoke out. Through a spokesperson, she said Phil had made mistakes. She stood by him, but she admitted that he'd done wrong. That was new. After decades of silence, she finally acknowledged that something wasn't right. And yet, the tour itself has said almost nothing. No statement, no investigation, no suspension, just crickets. It's like they're hoping the story will blow over if they ignore it long enough. But here's the problem for them. It's not blowing over. More people are talking, more questions are being asked, and the silence is starting to look a lot like complicity. Where does that leave Phil Mickelson? He's 56 years old. He missed all 4 majors this year for the first time since 1990. He's played just one LIV event in South Africa, and barely anyone was watching. His career is effectively over. But that's not the sad part. The sad part is that his legacy is now stained by something that can't be erased with a few birdies. He went from being one of the most beloved players in golf history to someone who can't even show his face at a tournament without whispers following him. Gambling made people question his judgment. Live made people question his loyalty. But this makes people question his character. So here we are, a decade after the alleged incident. 2 women have now spoken out. 3 clubs have shown him the door, and the PGA Tour is standing in the corner with its hands in its pockets, pretending everything is fine. But everything is not fine, and that's why this story matters. Not because we want to tear down a golf legend, but because we want to know that the sport we love holds its heroes accountable. We want to know that the culture is changing, that silence is no longer acceptable, and maybe that's the real victory here. Ashley Perez didn't speak up to destroy Phil Mickelson. She spoke up so that other women wouldn't have to carry the weight of the secret alone. She spoke up so that the next time something happens, the silence is broken faster. She spoke up because staying quiet for 10 years was already too long. So here's my final thought. We talk a lot about tradition in golf. We love the history, the green jackets, the old courses, the handshakes on the 18th green. But some traditions need to die. The culture of silence, that's one of them. The refusal to hold players accountable because they're too valuable to the brand, that needs to go too. Phil Mickelson is a legend. That's not going to change. But legends can fall. And maybe that's okay, because the sport doesn't need untouchable idols. It needs integrity. And that integrity starts with telling the truth, even when the truth hurts. Before you go, I want to know what you honestly think. You heard the story. You know the details. Does this change how you see Phil's legacy, or does it just feel like more noise to ignore? Drop your take in the comments. And if you're the kind of fan who wants real, unfiltered golf coverage without the corporate spin, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We're here to tell the stories they won't touch.